It's ChrystalChyna,
and we're back with
another video.
Period.
Musicology 101 with
ChrystalChyna.
Episode 2.
The one and only.
Yes. The 2 and only. This is episode 2 of Musicology 101. We hope that you guys liked the last one.
Of the Jones
Girls. We actually did get a great response from Miss Shirley herself. So we are very excited about that.
And we love you so much, Miss Shirley.
We love you. We love you, Miss Shirley. Thank you so much for sharing our video and, you know, all the likes and followers that came through that. That
was amazing.
Whew, that made our week. As you can see, we are a little glammed out. You know, cut crease, did a little extra contour.
You know, we're like in a little disco
mood, you know.
A little bit.
A little laid back disco mood right now. But this look is inspired by who other than we do this video about. Crystal, should we give him a drum roll? Sylvester! Period. Yes. Let's get it.
Born Sylvester James Jr. in 1947 in Los Angeles, California. He was raised in the Watts neighborhood. Watts in the house. We're not from Watts, but you know,
we're from LA,
so we get it. Also, a little notable fact: he was also a resident in his early life as a child of Aliso Village Projects, which was a housing project in East LA. And that's also where our mother is from. She is from Aliso Village Projects, baby. She's an East LA baby for life.
Our mother, like Sylvester, was a part of the Great Migration.
Right.
I don't believe they lived there at the same time,
but she lived in the Aliso Village Projects. Jeffrey Daniel from Shalimar. So all the greats came from the Aliso Village Projects in East LA. Sylvester developed his love of music due to him growing up in a Pentecostal church family. And, you know, if you're from the church, especially a Pentecostal, Kojic, Baptist church, you know how prevalent music is.
Amen.
Because we are church girls. We grew up in the church. We grew up singing in church first.
Yeah.
So...
Yeah. Sylvester started actually singing when he was 3 years old in the church. By the time he was 8 years old, he actually became a featured soloist in the church choir. So he already had it. He already performing very moving renditions of gospel songs at a very young age. So he was a young boy and he was a featured soloist and everybody could see the anointing that God had on him. He still was the subject of bigotry and homophobia, not only facing the church, but he faced it at home too.
Right.
So
he was constantly harassed.
About
his sexuality.
His sexuality and his effeminate ways that he didn't agree with.
Exactly. Out in the way that he performed his solos at church. So that is why he became an easy target for harassment.
Right.
Well, they were not pleased to see that obviously he was openly gay.
And he was not hiding that.
Which
I love.
Really takes a lot of courage.
It does.
Even today, like growing up in a household in a church like that, or any church, that takes a lot of courage.
Even though he did go through that in the church and at home, thankfully he did have an ally in his grandmother who did accept him. So
thank God for grandmothers.
Thank God for grandmothers.
After years of dealing with the harassment in his household and in his church, Sylvester took it upon himself to go ahead and just leave Los Angeles, and he was in search for a city that would basically accept his queerness. So he landed in San Francisco, and that at the time San Francisco, and even still, but at the time San Francisco, that was the height. They had the height of the gay rights movement
and the hippies,
and that was in the late 60s.
Right.
So he found a city that accepted him, and he still went through a lot. Like he experienced like homelessness, and he wasn't really stable. Like he didn't have a stable place to be, but he was able to find that acceptance with his sexuality.
His instability and his homelessness, he did explore like different underground clubs and clubs that accepted gender fluid people in the Bay Area. His stability did kind of come in when he joined a drag troupe performance group, Cockettes.
Yes.
I love that.
I love that too.
he joined that performance troupe, and though it did provide him like the next step, I don't think it was the perfect fit for him. So he was in search for the next thing. Right. But that was just the first step into what he was about to step into.
Right. Period. And with the Cockettes, he was able to like experiment with his falsetto voice, and he was able to bring his church essence to like his performances with the Cockettes. So that's something else that he was able to do and basically build up the Sylvester that we know today.
Or hone the craft.
Hone the craft.
While still honing his craft, working on his falsetto and working on his performance style, he came into an opportunity and he met Harvey Fuqua. Harvey Fuqua was a one-time producer over at Motown, but now he was working for Fantasy Records, and he offered Sylvester an opportunity for a record deal. But the icing on the cake.
Say it. This is like this really is the icing.
This really is like oh, it's the cheese. It's the
cheddar.
It's the cheddar. That extra cheddar you put on the mac and cheese before you put it in the oven. It's that. When they added Martha Wash, and Azora Whitehead,
it was over.
It was over. Your push that Sylvester needed in order to, you know,
get that sound.
Get that sound. Gospel, Pentecostal background, that church sound that he was trying to incorporate into his music. So,
but I want to acknowledge their voice,
right?
Because it did help elevate, and it's almost like they were like a trio,
right?
You know, like together, because we hear so much of Azora and Martha in his music.
It was actually Sylvester that named them Two Tons of Fun. Whether they liked it or not, I'm not sure.
Right.
But that is a name that will go down in history.
Right. Because they were able to have their own success.
They were. If y'all don't know the song, well,
it's
you guys.
Raining men. Hallelujah, it's raining men. Hey. I love that song.
I mean, who doesn't
know that song? I feel like even if you don't even speak English, you know that song.
You definitely know Martha Wash's voice from Everybody Dance Now. Even though they did her wrong.
They did her wrong, but we might do a video on that.
We probably gotta do a video.
Because I have to do a separate video on that. But yes, those are the voices, right? That really put that cheese on that Sylvester music, okay?
Yes.
Two Tons of Fun. So you get the point.
You get where we're going.
You get where we're going.
Exactly. Sylvester debuted his self-titled album, Sylvester, his first album. And, you know, they worked hard, but it didn't do as well as they would have hoped.
Right. But guess what? He stepped right back on in and he released, what is it called?
Step 2. Period.
Step 2.
And that
isn't that kind of ironic?
Yeah,
I said he just stepped
right on in. Step right on in. Which actually has a few of our favorites.
You make me feel mighty real. You make me feel mighty real. Make me feel mighty real. Make me feel mighty real. Yeah.
That. I'm like, they don't do it like that no more.
Don't.
They don't do it like that. That's real disco.
Yes. You know, that's the kind of disco I prefer. I always like to reference our uncle, Ricky Grundy. We miss him very much. He had actually wrote a gospel song called Call Him Up. And every time I hear like a Sylvester joint and I compare it to that, it always reminds me, like they're very similar. They have both of that late 70s, early 80s like disco feel, but it's still, because both of them are rooted in gospel, you can hear both of them. So actually, I might put that song in the description. That same tempo, so you guys can hear that and what I'm talking about, because it's that same thing, like that church sound. You can hear it. It's so deeply rooted in Sylvester and his music, and I just think that's so cool.
Another one off that same album.
Off that same album.
Parentheses Disco Heat. Period.
I'm sure back in the day, I would love to be a fly on the wall during that.
Yeah.
Back in the day, that probably had the clubs on fire.
Fa.
So there is something that I do want to add. Sylvester really never saw himself as solely just a disco artist. He was heavily influenced by
Auntie Patty.
Patty LaBelle. He was heavily influenced by her. So he saw himself doing records like Patty LaBelle would do, or even like her persona. He saw himself as like a Patty LaBelle type of artist. That tied with Harvey Fuqua trying to tone down his effeminate ways, his image. That kind of led to their creative differences, and that became like the end of their relationship. He still released a few things with Harvey Fuqua before his departure.
His departure from Fantasy Records and working with Harvey Fuqua, he decided to go back and, well, not really go back in a sense, but he decided to work with a producer, Patrick Cowley, which is actually a producer that worked on Mighty Real. He worked on the Step 2 album, which is where Mighty Real is from, and decided to join his record label. And they started working, and things just went off from there.
Yeah, they went off. Like, he was able to secure some hits from that. That, I don't want to, it didn't really last long, only because Patrick Cowley actually became ill and he subsequently died from complications of AIDS. So he was still on the label after Patrick had passed away, but he was left to work with producers who could not bring that same magic that he was able to get with Patrick.
Right.
So that kind of left things
In limbo.
You
know, though Sylvester was kind of in limbo, dealing with the loss of Patrick Cowley and trying to figure out what was next. He was able to secure a deal with Warner Brothers,
which is a major label,
and was slated to have a project roll out. Unfortunately, Sylvester was diagnosed with AIDS himself, and sadly he succumbed to the illness very quickly. So he really didn't get to fully take advantage of the resources from the new sign-on.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I just get emotional.
Even though we were not born when Sylvester passed away, it's still
a very touchy
It is
story.
very touchy, and not to make it personal, but dang, we really love Sylvester.
Yes.
All in all, we just love how, even though the time that Sylvester came up in, he was undeniably himself.
Right.
He didn't let anybody
try to change
him or define what he was, and he knew that God loved him, and he loved God, and nothing or nobody was going to try to take that away from him or change his mind in that. So, yeah.
We love Sylvester. We look up to Sylvester.
We look up to that. I want to be that person that is undeniably me.
Right.
And that's what he was. He was undeniably he.
Right.
So thank you guys for watching this video.
This was a lot of fun.
This was fun. Please like, comment, and subscribe.
Yes.
And tell us what you guys want to see next.
We want to hear from you guys. So remember, like, comment, and subscribe. Follow us on our Instagram, our Twitter, everything. All of that is at ChrystalChyna, and that's spelled ChrystalChyna.
CHYNA.
Bye.
Love you. Bye.
Love you guys.